welcome to the 8th of October meeting of Overview and Scrutiny. We've got Beth online. I guess we've got some officers online whose names I can't read from here. Right, okay, so any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. And minutes of the previous meeting. We go through the minutes. Any comments? Anything wrong with the minutes? Anybody spot? Quick show of hands on accepting them. Everybody? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Thank you. And are there any questions, Neil?
No public questions and no member questions, Chair.
Excellent. Right. So on to item 39, the Corporate Complaints Annual Report. And I think, who's going to introduce it? Rachel? Are you introducing it? Or, sorry, no.
I thought it was being introduced by one of the officers.
Hi there, Rachel.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Lewis Borges. I'm Head of Customer Experience and Complaints and Change. I'm joined by my colleague, Denise, who's the Customer Relations Officer. And on the call, we've also got Francis Hayward and Kim Yakubusin from Housing, because the tenants process is ever so slightly different from the corporate complaints process. So we're here to talk about the annual report that we included in the pack, and we will be talking specifically about the corporate side. We've included adult social care and children's for that holistic view, just in comparison, but they have their own separate overview and scrutiny, and it runs through those channels. I'll keep it fairly brief because it would be good to have sort of discussion on it and take any questions. But with the annual report this year, you'll see that the complaints year on year, the trend is that it's up just short of 8%. We're not particularly surprised by that. We've made it really easy for our residents to complain. So since we were last back with you just over a year ago, we've done a huge amount of work on our website to make it much more accessible and also to welcome that feedback. And also we have made improvements to our online reporting elements through our customer relationship management system, which is a CRM. We've also done a huge amount of work across the directorates with our officers in terms of the 3 C's training. So that's around sort of the care and clarity in line with our customer charter, and also our customer experience program, which is it was 7 modules and now it's 3, and it's all about facilitating the needs of our residents and listening and acting upon that and being empowered to make improvements. In terms of the report, you'll see that we've included some learnings and other headlines as well in that. And yeah, we're happy to take any questions on it. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. If there's anything that you'd like to ask myself or Dan, or particularly around housing, Francis and Kim will also step in as well.
Okay, has anyone got any comments to make or questions on the report? I have got one layout sort of presentation comment, which is that on page 25, where you've got the bubbles, the ASC team seems to be talking about the same thing as the housing customer care team. They've got the same comment.
Okay, is that the compliments page there?
The compliments, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Caroline.
It's just a quick question. Do you get many abusive complaints, and how do you deal with them? Or you just don't get customers or complainers being?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We don't get many. In the grand scheme of it and the perspective, we don't get many. We do get occasionally a few, and we do have a policy that helps us manage that. And it wasn't that long ago, although it's probably longer than I think. We came, I think it was earlier this year, we came with the unreasonably persistent complainants policy for overview and scrutiny's comments and feedback. So that is something that is open to us if it does go down that route. However, it's really infrequent, and I think certainly in my years of being involved in customer services and complaints, which is more than 10 years now, I think it's only been used less than half a dozen times. So it's quite extreme if that's needed. We always try to resolve it through other means in that. So yeah, does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to ask on the sort of overall summary of the formal complaints, page 23, I think it is. There's quite a big difference in the different areas, which ones have been sort of managed by early resolution, which go to formal. For example, with place and growth, a lot get resolved with much fewer going on to formal complaints, whereas children's services, for example, it's kind of flipped the other way around. Just sort of wondering why is that? I mean, I know there's something in the place and growth, like lots of that was to do with grass cutting, basically, and is it just to do with the nature of the types of complaints, which is why the data's skewed like that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. With the children's services, it's the complexity often is the main reason why they are much more challenging and difficult to resolve early. Whereas Place and Growth have actually done, and George is on the call as well, they've done a huge amount of work on their customer experience and their customer satisfaction, particularly around the transport and highways areas. So they've got dedicated resource in there that is focusing on all the data that we get in. So we have something called GovMetrics, which if you go on our website, it's the ones with the smiley and unhappy faces also, and people can write comments, and it's that real life feedback, and that's why they've been able to resolve a lot of the complaints early, because actually it's something that we can resolve by listening to that particular resident, giving us that feedback and being proactive and acting upon that quickly. Whereas with children's services, generally it's linked to, like we've seen with Send, and also we've got the national picture there that's also causing us a bit of pressure. But it's usually the complexity. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that.
I think, I mean, George can comment on this, but I think I concur with what you said, Lewis. I think it's also the number of front-end facing services that sit under Place and Growth as well. And that's why you see them being able to resolve a lot of these issues a lot more quickly and informally compared to Send cases, which have got a lot of history behind a case before it reaches the complaint stage. And it's that complexity issue that really makes them can only be resolved formally.
And Chair, if I may, just very briefly, so just to endorse what's been said already, but and also just to highlight some of the work that the highways and transport team have done, I think, in terms of the progress that they've made over the last year in trying to resolve issues quickly, in trying to make sure that service users go to the right page, get the right information, avoid making their concerns and complaints in the very first place. So there's lots of work on that, which I'm really pleased to see in the slides that's presented, and really, good work by Chris Easton and his team on that front. Thank you, Chair.
Marie-Louise.
Thank you very much. Two questions. One is about the sort of learning that we're getting out of the Grenfell inquiry about how complaints were handled by the council and their attitude towards complaints. And I just wondered whether you had been thinking about how we might take some of that learning on board. And the other was in terms of, I know it's kind of the ideology, but in terms of concrete examples of things that we have changed, things that we do differently because we've received complaints, that, the idea that complaints are sort of a way of improving service as well. And I think I wondered if you had some examples and of actual practice that has been changed, whether or not the complaint was upheld. Yeah, because sometimes we can learn a lot from the complaints that aren't upheld.
Thanks very much for your question, Mary-Louise. I'll start with the second question, and then my housing colleagues might also talk about the Grenfell element too. So in terms of the practice, I would say it might sound simple, but the most probably radical change that we've made over the last couple of years is we quite often receive that feedback or that dissatisfaction or complaint quite often it's via email. And what we tend to do, or what we used to do previously, was maybe send back a bit of an officious or maybe defensive response on email that actually it was not particularly helpful, I would say. It didn't maybe come across in the way, it might be factually correct, but it was probably a bit to the point. So under the 3 C's training and our customer service program, we actually just encourage our officers to pick up the phone because quite often it's just that human interaction, and particularly on the housing front. I don't know, Kim, I think I saw you nodding there and you would agree with that. And again, in place and growth, because that's where we get a lot of the feedback and a lot of the interaction, because they're the services that our residents use on a weekly or everyday basis, and just purely for the volume. But picking up the phone is probably the practice that has changed the most. We are living in a more digital world. That's absolutely true, and that's why we accept it through all channels. And actually, we definitely prefer it through a digital route for us to be able to manage demand and be able to respond. But actually, sometimes just picking up the phone and having that conversation with the resident is the paramount thing that changes our outlook and our feedback.
Chair, is it worth just kind of talk about the first part of the question, I think, and Kim will come in, I think, on this as well. But so the changes that you can see in the slides in terms of how housing complaints are dealt with are in part an outcome of the learning from Grenfell, and I think that the key issue for that situation was not a position where the tenants weren't being listened to, their voices weren't being heard, their concerns weren't being followed up on, changes weren't happening, and there's a real that lesson from that tragedy is where we are, I think, now in terms of our the national way of dealing with complaints from housing. Since then, we've had other really difficult issues related to, for example, damp and mould, and the death of a young boy in the north of England. I forget which council. And again, issues around: are we listening to tenants? Are we learning? Are we changing? Are we modifying what we do so that we can respond efficiently and effectively? And I think we're Kim will want to come in. We're in a really good place. We have not least an award-winning relationship with our tenants in terms of TLIP, which we can be very proud of. We have a really good, strong focus on our complaints. We listen to issues coming up.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just I was asking about like actual practice rather than learning about how to respond to complaints, what we actually do, policy wise.
Yeah.
As a result of complaints.
Yeah,
Do you see what I mean? That they've actually.
I do, but I think the context is really important in terms of that, how we've listened and learned. So Kim will give us some examples of TLIP in action. I think that would be really helpful to understand that. I think what I would refer to from a P&G point of view are the successes that we've had in highways and transport, where you can see the change in the team. We've learned in terms of processes. We've thought about how we can offer a better service to our customers, how we can respond in a better way, more efficient way, and that's had an impact in terms of the number of complaints that we receive. Kim, did you want to come in on the kind of TLIP side? I think it's important to give some examples on that.
So not necessarily the TLIP, but actually about listening to tenants and actually listening to their complaint responses. Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct, George. One of the things that came out of Grenfell was not listening to tenants. And one of the feedbacks that we get is ensuring that we've listened to tenants so we do pick up the phone. So stage 2 for us. So stage 1 is technically our early resolution. We're not allowed, everything has to be formalised. Stage 1 is always actually assessed by the service. What we've learnt from feedback from tenants is stage 2 needs to be done by someone independent. And that independent usually comes from another part of a different part of the service. So you've got service managers who might be in rental income who are assessing complaints on behalf of housing management. That was directly from feedback from our tenants, because they said, I want you to ensure that I'm being listened to. And so part of the process changes are you pick up the phone as soon as you get a complaint, you have a conversation with the tenant and you listen. You then put that formal response back. If that tenant is not satisfied with that, absolutely, they can go to stage 2 and they can go to the Ombudsman at any point as well during the whole process. Stage 2 is looked at by a totally different service manager who does exactly the same. They pick up the phone and have a conversation with that tenant, and they have that conversation to see, have they been listened to in the stage 1, and what is it that they need? What are their outcomes? What are their expected outcomes? And also, is there anything that we need to do to change the way the service is? And we've also introduced a lessons learned form that goes through the whole of our process from stage 1 to stage 2, which actually says, did we change the service in any way? Did we improve it in any way directly from this complaint? And that's so that we can report to our tenants and to the Ombudsman, and of course TLIP, that we've learned lessons from this complaint, and that's because we listen to our tenants and take them very seriously. That's what I thought I'd add to that.
Has your question been answered?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. I think Alison was next.
Yeah, I wasn't completely clear, but I've worked it out now. That planning comes under development management. And I just would be interested to understand what proportion of complaints about planning go to stage 2.
I can give a steer on that if you like, Chair. I would say that, yeah, quite a high volume of planning complaints do escalate to stage 2, but the majority, I would say near enough 100%, are not upheld because of fundamentally the decisions made are not found to be procedurally incorrect. The process in which they made that decision was not found to be procedurally incorrect. And just wanted to touch on actually upon the previous member's question regarding concrete examples. We did see quite a number of stage 2 complaints arrive because neighbours felt that they were not involved in the process. They posted comments and they felt that site visits, the planning officer didn't visit their side of the property to take their views on board. And this resulted in us updating our website about site visits and advising our customers and our residents actually it's not a statutory requirement in reaching a planning decision. And so we saw a number of these types of complaints decrease as a result. So I hope that's addressed some of your questions there.
Absolutely. I think improving communication is really always the way forward, because I know at Children's Services recently we had a presentation of the SEN survey, which had very, very shocking satisfaction rates. It really has plummeted, and Prue herself said that communication is something that we have to work on a lot, but I think that goes right across the council. But I think, that's been acknowledged in your report, and it's very interesting, a lot of insights. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be really useful, what was said earlier on lessons learned. Obviously, the team internally they know what the lessons learned are, but from our point of view, I think it would be useful to have a maybe summary of what those lessons are and part of this report. So we know what the lessons have been learned, because obviously this report is 23-24. That was 7 months ago. So it'd be useful to know what were they and what has been implemented so far in something black and white as recorded, rather than just have virtual sort of questions being asked, right? So I think this is a useful exercise, not only for the officers, which I'm sure you guys do, but also as councillors as well, as a part of the scrutiny committee. So can I request, Chair, that in future, if you can have that formal sort of part of this report to be included, what the lessons have been learned.
Well, there are learning and improvements under each heading.
No, this is a question actually more in line with what was asked earlier on. I'm not sure that will address that. Other question I had was,
well, I'm not sure what you're getting at then, because each of these areas has learning and improvements under it.
which page are you looking at?
All of them. I mean, each area, directorates and service areas. Actually, that hasn't. Page 29, for example, adult social care. It's got 4 bullets under the blue section. Under that, there's key themes and learning and improvements. And then ongoing focus. And it's the same on children's services, etc. So does that help?
Yeah, probably. I was expecting more detail than just headlines, perhaps. That's one other thing I was going to pick up was communication side of things as well, because when the residents complain in terms of the process, sometime a number of times people have said they actually raise a complaint and we don't hear about it for a long time. It just goes, some cases they've used the words of black hole. So what is the process you have in place, and how do you give that feedback to the residents who's raised an issue? What is that sort of communication process which takes place while the complaint is being looked at, and what at each stage the complaint is at? How is that actually communicated with the resident?
Thanks for your question, Shahid. I'll refer to Dan in a second, but just I think what you're describing there to me is more about the customer experience, so that customer journey of when they make contact with the council. So certainly within the complaints process, the formal process, whether that's at early resolution stage 1 or stage 2, communication is maintained throughout that process. And also there are very strict and tight deadlines and service level agreements that we have in our policy that we must adhere to, and that's how we keep them updated. However, I think your point around people and our residents and our customers contacting us and maybe not getting that response either quick enough or I think you said a black hole, that is definitely something that we are working on in terms of the customer experience. So as part of the GovMetrics data that we get, that is a live situation where we feed back to the services to encourage them to be much more proactive in that engagement, and managing expectations is really high on that priority list for us, because there's nothing worse than whether you contact your local authority or a company or any walk of life where you're just not assured that piece of correspondence, that communication has been even received or is being acted upon. And what we're trying to do is manage the demand, because failure demand is a very, very expensive problem if you don't get it under control. Because and I think we see that in certain areas within our authority, where if you don't manage it, and that's why a lot of investment has gone in on highways, and they have dedicated resource in there to ensure that actually if someone does email us, it's not just about making sure we respond within the 10-day service level agreement. It's making sure that they get that initial response to say we are looking at it, you will receive a response by X date. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to come in on a particular complaint route for Shahid.
No, yeah, it's I think what we receive, we only know what we know of when it comes via the complaints form. Obviously, we'll happily receive any complaint via telephone or a letter or any other format. We will address the customer in terms of straight away notifying them how that complaint, the matter is going to be addressed. Usually they'll expect a response from the relevant service team within 5 working days, and that service officer of that team will advise the customer as to how that issue will be managed. Either it hopefully will be resolved within those 5 working days, or if it requires, because of the complexity of it, a more formal response, they'll be advised that it will take 10 working days. This is the guidance that we are trying to follow from the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman. And it's really unfortunate to hear that you have residents who are not receiving that experience. But it's difficult for us to know. You said it's falling into a black hole. It's difficult for us to know why that is and how that is happening. So I think it's a case of if we can have more details of that, we'll be happy to go away and really investigate what's been happening there, I think.
You okay with that?
Yeah, obviously, I'll take this outside. I don't want to talk about specifics here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's absolutely fine, Chid. You've got my email address. You know, we've communicated several times over the years, so please do drop me a line if you need me to look into something specific. I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, Adrian.
Yeah, first I wanted to say a big thank you to the whole team for supporting this and the change in operation mode. I would say, I think this is a really, really good idea, and the description given by Kim, I think, sounded really perfect. Thank you, Kim, as usual. I struggle to understand this table of data on what page is it? Yeah, 23. It seems to me that for some services, you have a lot of early resolution, which then don't go into formal. And for housing, there's no early resolution mechanism. So everything's formal. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I'll pick that one up, actually. So that is absolutely correct. Within housing, under the Housing Ombudsman Statutory Complaints Handling Code, we're not allowed to do early resolution. And in fact, the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman will be encouraging us to go over to all formal across the board at some point. But currently, it's just the Housing Ombudsman. We can only do stage 1 and stage 2, and that's it.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also take the point about the learnings. They're clear for me anyway. But one thing that might be useful for me as a person who doesn't understand the details of this process is, we have on page 23 again, 11 cases upheld by the LGSCO. Obviously, we're dealing with personal information here, but it might be useful, in my opinion, to see at least 1 or 2 examples where all the personal details have been redacted, so that we can kind of understand what decisions have been upheld against us. But that would be my only comment from what I personally see as a very positive step forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian, for that comment and that feedback. We can definitely look into that. We've before this report came here, it goes through our normal process, which is CLT as well. And I'm sure George and Sally would agree, but that's something we were particularly looking at around those stage 2 themes and the LGSCO themes moving forwards, and that's something that we do want to include. So I'm sure we can definitely make sure that you get better visibility in some examples, so you can get a flavour of what those things are, what those issues are.
Thank you very much.
Dave.
Hello. So first question, how many members of staff do we have dealing with complaints, and how many man hours, because I appreciate it might not be somebody's full-time job, how many man hours does that cover across those number of employees?
I think in terms of officer hours, I would have to come back to you on that one to give you a more specific title. But within my own corporate complaints team, I have a team lead, and then we have 4 officers that are attached out into the directorates, of which Dan is one of them. Sorry, 5 underneath the team lead, of which Dan is one of them. There is a dedicated resource in housing as well, and under with Kim and Francis. And also within children's services as well, they have their own dedicated resource for that. Dan, I don't know how many, is it 2 officers in there, I think, at that point?
It's 1 customer relations officer for SEND, and then you've got the children's statutory social care complaints manager.
Yeah, just because they're people, they're not all necessarily like a entire FTE, but I'm more than happy to provide that accurately for you, so you can get a clear picture of exactly how many FTE and what that would equate to on a yearly basis. It's certainly, when I was the complaints manager about 10 years ago, when I sat in customer services, it's certainly a lot more now resource in terms of, but it's all part of the customer experience and part of that data monitoring thing, rather than specifically just answering complaints and being like a complaints production line of responses. But I'm more than happy to provide that to the group so that they can see that and the structure as well.
Thank you very much. Second question is, obviously, the acknowledging and logging a stage 1 complaint within 5 days of receipt. How did you arrive at the 5 working day number? And just talk me through that, because for me, to acknowledge and log, 5 days seems a relatively long time.
Yeah, I can address this one, Chair, if that's okay. This is us implementing the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman's Complaint Handling Code that came into effect from April this year, and they stated that within 5 working days, the council has to acknowledge a complaint and notify the complainant as to how that complaint will be managed, and as to whether it will be issued a stage 1 response. It's the same 5 working day period in terms of us acknowledging it if it escalates to stage 2 as well.
And what I would add, although that's the best practice and the guidance that we follow from, we quite often do respond much sooner than that. I was going to say routinely, we don't sit on it and wait, to day 4 or 5. It does get dealt with sooner. It's just, I think, certainly some authorities probably do struggle to answer in that sort of time, but that's the guidance, but we do it much quicker than that, is what I would say.
And that's really good, and it might be worth saying that we adhere to best conduct in terms of answering within 5 days, and our actual average response time is 2.4 or whatever the answer is, which shows that you're actually doing it much faster. Because when people see the within 5, they're concerned that you're, as you say, tickling the limit, the limits of it. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any more questions? We all happy? Like it? Well, thank you very much to all the officers who've presented on this, and you can relax now.
Catherine, can I just confirm we're going to get the number of hours?
Yeah.
We will get.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. And if I could just say one thing, Chair, as head of customer experience, I also welcome any member to come and join the customer service team, and you can come and listen into some of our calls and hear some of that. And we can arrange that for as short or as long as you like, because it is quite a good insight to hear what our residents are contacting us through the front door. We do it as part of our onboarding process for many of our staff, and CLT members also come and do it periodically, and Susan once a quarter. And I do recommend, if you haven't experienced it before, you can see a bit of our technology and see how we actually process any front door interaction. But so you're welcome, and please, my email address is on the papers. Do get in touch if you'd like that arranged. But thanks very much for your time. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds great. I hope people will take you up on that. Yeah, I will. Right.
Chair, So I just say I noticed on my phone after the event, unfortunately, that Pauline's given her apologies.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Right. Okay, on to item 40, overview, mind, not scrutiny, overview of the emerging equality, diversity and inclusion policy. And I think Rachel Bishop-Firth is going to introduce this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So this segment of the evening is an overview session for the committee to look at how the council is developing a new equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, a new EDI strategy. This is going to set out the roadmap for the council to continue improving in its approach to inclusion and to meeting the public sector equality duty. So as a borough, we do have legal duties towards our residents, that's public sector equality duty, and also to our employees. So like many local authorities in the UK, we're using the Local Government Association's Equality Framework for Local Government to inequality issues, and this means that we've got an effective, trusted approach used throughout the country, which also helps us to focus on the issues which matter to people in Wokingham. So, for example, in order to get our residents fast and consistent answers and to manage our costs as a council, we're increasingly moving towards asking residents to raise queries and issues online. However, many of our older residents in particular don't use smartphones and don't use the internet. So how can we make sure that we don't exclude them? How also do we accommodate residents who are on a tight budget, who often want to use money to pay, they want to pay in cash, as it helps them to manage their money. The population of the borough is changing. We can see that in the census, the latest census, and we need to look at how we can make sure that those moving to Wokingham from London, from Hong Kong or wherever else in the world can thrive in the borough. This policy will have an impact on reducing inequality in the borough, providing equitable services to residents and meeting the needs of our diverse workforce. So Emily Higson is here tonight. She's going to run us through these slides that have been shared with you in the pack with the following purpose: to make sure that you as the committee are aware of and supportive of the approach being taken to develop a new EDI strategy, that you as members have opportunity to feed into the new strategy, and also that you're aware of the next steps being taken. So thank you very much, and over to you, Emily.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks for having me along to show you what we're doing at this very early stage of developing the strategy, and hopefully you'll have some really useful input for us to help us shape the strategy as well going forward. So just to give an overview really of why we need an EDI strategy, and many of you will already be aware of this, but the Equality Act 2010 means that we have a public sector equality duty as a local authority, which means that we have to fulfil certain tasks so that we're complying with the Equality Act. It's also just really good practice to be inclusive for our residents and our staff. And we really need to hear what it is that people, both who work for the council but outside, who are residents in our communities, to understand what they need and what they want. So the strategy is a document which is going to set out what our aims are for the next 4 to 5 years, and why we have them. It is an internal and an external document, so it's for both. We want it to be accessible to all, and we want it to help us drive inclusion through all of our other strategies, from the council plan that's sitting above to all the other strategies and plans that we have. So we're looking to be inclusive, get community input and staff input as well. So just to bring you up to date, the work we've done so far, we started out doing quite a lot of desktop research, looking at good practice, where we're going with the legislation and case law, looked at lots of different EDI strategies from other councils and started to develop our project plan. We've done a lot of research into the demographics of Wokingham, so understanding what's changing, and what's likely to change in the next few years as well. So we know from looking at schools, for example, that's really showing us an increase in diversity that's not actually come through in things like the latest census. So it's sort of giving us an idea of what the population is going to look like. We've established a working group. We've been doing a staff survey, which completed quite recently. We've got lots of responses to work through and understand what our staff think, what our workforce think. And then we've been starting to do some sessions with our managers network, with service level forums, so different staff groups. Bringing us up to date, obviously tonight is part of our engagement plan as well. So this is very much a two-way thing. It's not us telling you what we're doing, it's you helping us to shape that. And we're starting to do work out how we're going to do some further engagement with our wider communities as well. So just to tell you a bit more about the equality framework that Rachel touched on, this was developed by the LGA a number of years ago, and they updated it in 2021. And it really is the model of best practice that certainly most councils I know of use to understand how they're doing and how they are meeting their public sector equality duty. It comes under 4 modules that you can see there that relate to sort of different areas of work that the council does. And under each of those modules, there are between 3 and 5 themes. What you don't see here is that underneath that there are a set of criteria as well that we can use to understand where we're at under those different themes. And there are 3 stages, 3 levels of progress. So it starts at developing, and it goes on to achieving, and then finally you get to excellent. So we've measured ourselves against this since 2021 every year, and we can see the progress we're making year on year. We're just in the middle of doing another self-assessment. So we've asked our not our own team, but another team in the council to do another self-assessment to look at where we are and what evidence we have, and so we can identify where the gaps are, basically. It will also tell us what excellent looks like, so we know what we're aiming for. So that's the first part of our approach, and obviously that gives us a really good framework for where to start, but we're also looking at data and insight that we have available. So we've looked at demographics. We've also taken lots of insight from other projects. So we've spoken to our residents quite a lot over the last few months and the last year or so, doing the community's vision, developing the council plan. So we've taken a lot of what people have already told us that they want and need, and sort of looked at it through that sort of equality and inclusion lens. And we've been doing some statistical analysis on that and trying to understand all the different things that are going to impact us over the next few years. And then the third part of our approach is really around engagement and co-development. Hopefully you're aware that we have an equality forum, which is an external and independent group that we work with quite closely. So we really want to work with them to help us develop the strategy, to help us engage with the wider community. So we're working with them and hoping to sort of set out a plan for that, which will lead us into then working better with our communities and understanding them. We have done some engagement with our workforce, but we want to do more. We have staff equality networks for certain protected groups, and they will be feeding in as well and telling us what they think and what they need. And obviously a key stakeholder for us is also members. And that's across the whole spectrum of members, which is one of the reasons why we're here today, to get your views. So one of the things I'd like you to maybe think about, and then we can come to it at the end, is with your knowledge of your ward particularly, but also the wider borough, who is it that you see as currently not getting equitable access to services, and what groups might we want to target? So those are kind of specific questions from me, but also if there's anything else you think we should be aware of that you want us to think about, that would be really welcome as well. Just to share the next steps, we're going to start drafting. We've already done some engagement. We're going to start drafting a sort of a framework for what this is going to look like. We're going to do further engagement, as I said, with external groups and internal groups. We will be doing some formal public consultation in 2025. We want to come back here before we do that, just to share what we're going to be taking out to the public. And then we'll do a final draft. And I think what we've agreed earlier is that we'll come back here again before that final version goes through its decision-making process. So there'll be a number of opportunities to feed in and to help us really shape our strategy. And just finally, that's what the timeline looks like. We're aiming to have the final version signed off at full council in July. So there's obviously a process to go through there, but that's just to highlight the main things that we'll be doing to get us to that point. So I'm going to take down the slides, but really over to members, really to give us your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. I think Shahid was first out of the starting blocks.
Thank you, Emily, for the brief intro. You said there's a lot of engagement has happened within the community. What format has that taken, and which particular community are we talking about as well, if you have details of that?
So the targeted engagement with community groups is yet to happen. So that's where we want to bring in the Equality Forum to help us engage with groups. Sometimes we feel it's better that organisations and people who know the communities best can tell us how to engage and to help us with that. So the external engagement we've done so far has been through a survey that we've done. Have we done that?
No, that's going live.
That's about to go live. So most of the engagement's been internal
so far. Yeah.
But we are planning to do the external part. That's sort of next.
Yeah.
Okay, that's correct. My understanding, maybe I misunderstood that has happened already.
No.
And that's why I was keen to know where that has. But you answered that question. I mean, the difficult challenge is always contacting those members of the community who are difficult to reach, and not necessarily the organizations, even sometimes they find it very difficult to reach them as well. And that's where the challenge lies, and always has been a challenge. But and that's where I'm really keen that what the strategy would be to how to engage with them. But that's where the problem is. And second, I suppose, thought is that why would they get engaged? What is in it for them? Right? That's another question to ask. Right? I mean, people get engaged with you because there's something they can gain from. But if they're not gaining anything, we might want to engage with them, but they might not engage with us. So the question is, what is in it for them? And what we can do, or the way we present ourselves, is we should attract them to say, look, it is in your own interest to actually engage with us, and you will get X, Y, Z as a result of that, the benefits. I suppose that's what I'm referring to. I suppose.
I think that's a really important point, and something we need to bear in mind when we're going out is how we describe what we're trying to do, and like you say, how is it going to benefit those who take part?
Well, I think that's part of the questioning. So that's part of the structure of the questions. It's actually asking the community what it wants to see, because that's part of that engagement, because I think it's knowing the difference that they want to see so that you can then put something in place. And I don't mean the council will suddenly be able to undertake all of that activity, but how does it work with its community, its wider community, to then develop some different initiatives? And I think that's what we're keen to understand, because I think what we're trying to say is we haven't got all of the answers. Yes, we've got ideas and we've got things that we feel that we should be doing or working on. How can the council best facilitate some of that as well, I think, because I think what it's saying is often the community is best placed to know what its community needs. And I think that's where I think hopefully we can see some benefits.
Can I just jump in with a question which goes back a bit further? Is You say the Equality Forum is independent, but where did that come from? Who decides who's on the Equality Forum, if you see what I mean? Because I certainly don't know.
So we're actually working with the Equality Forum at this very moment, actually just reviewing who is part of that particular group, because I think it's something you need to refresh constantly, because you can have a list for a period of time, but those can very quickly change. So we're actually just going through that very exercise right now to actually look at who is part of that. And I think it is that thing of, and what we've been talking to the forum about, is actually then actively going out and talking to different groups and actually looking to recruit those groups. But you need to ensure, so again, we're just reviewing the terms of reference of what the Equality Forum is actually doing. So again, it's a very clear understanding of what that involvement would mean and the difference that you would then be looking to make as being part of that group. So it's constantly, as I say, I think it's constantly evolving, because also I think our community is constantly sort of making changes. So I think it's just being open to that. But it's something, as I say, that we're working with the forum on. And I think it's, again, something in the future that we can look at with regard to sharing more of that information with the committee.
So who funds the Equality Forum?
It's not funded. It's not a funded.
It's just
group.
so it's just
a group
volunteers.
Group of volunteers. There can be opportunities for funding, but those opportunities are, we don't have huge amounts of money, but if there are opportunities for the community, we had some grants that were available. I think it was 2023 or beginning of this year. My mind goes a little bit blank with but there's a proper process. So there's, again, those have been, I think they were published on the website, on our website. So again, it's something that's open to all of Wokingham community, so that, again, it's not just the Equality Forum, it's sort of open, as I say, to that wider community to make applications into those particular funds. And so that's the only monies that, to be fair, that there actually are. But we're obviously always keeping that under review to make sure that we've got the right level of support in place.
Okay. Well, did you
still finish yet, please? Sorry.
I hope that would help you.
Yeah.
I mean, what you were asking. But
no, it's just on. It's related to that.
Yeah. Okay.
The point I was going to make is, I think one of the downsides is being in the council for some time. There is obviously we had some engagement before as well. So obviously this is EDI strategy, but also we had engagement in other areas. So one thing we need to be mindful of is that if the community does come back and actually ask for something, and we can't deliver it according to expectations, that will initiate a disengagement as well. I can give a particular example here. Is last couple of years, certain community members they ask for female-only swimming sessions, which the council tried, but after a long time, we were able to give them, offer them something which was not suitable for them at all. So therefore, hardly anybody took part. So you can see that they will be say, look, you don't listen, we don't get there was a reasonable request on their part, but we could not deliver after a long time of promise. And that actually you can see, they say, look, nothing has happened. What is the point of engaging? Nothing's going to happen anyway. So this is just one example I'm giving, that we need to be mindful that the process we take, we engage with people, we listen, but somehow there are raised expectations that are raised, and we can't deliver it. And that will be difficult for that community to engage with again. So we need to be mindful of the whole process, that we don't end up in the same trap again.
Okay, I think, did you want to say something, Rachel?
Yes, I did. I was just wanting to ask a few, to add a few comments about the Equality Forum, because I have been involved with that since the very beginning. So it's been around for a couple of years, and it has a really broad cross-community reach with lots of different voluntary groups taking part and inputting into the discussion. I attend their meetings very regularly. I find it an absolutely fantastic way of getting an insight into people's concerns and getting feedback. I would say that the Equality Forum, if I look, for example, at the issue that you're raising, Shahid, it can be a route to getting comments, into the council for discussion, but by its very nature, it wouldn't be a route for delivering things of the sort that you're talking about with the women's only swimming session. But I do find them an incredibly valuable source of opinion and insight into our diverse community. And the grants which were mentioned earlier, I know that there is another set of grants opening in February. So I'm keeping an eye on that for a community group. So thanks very much.
Thank you. I think Caroline's next. Oh, okay, Adrian.
Excuse me. I'm going deaf, and it's getting worse. And when service providers communicate on the telephone, they generally speak very quickly, and sometimes the public network has not got a great signal. So what I've done on a number of occasions is have my wife sit in on the call, and she can hear better than I can, so that she can help with the call. When we talk about people with, like myself, people going deaf or other issues, do we as a council, do we nominate other people to help that individual, like a son or a daughter for adult social care or something like this? Or do we always go back to the person that the service is being delivered to?
Going to be honest to say, I don't know if I know the answer to your question. I think it's something we will follow up on, though, and I can come back to you on that. I've just noticed Sally's come online, so whether she is able to answer that question, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, sure.
It's a really good question. Thank you, Adrian. And it would be down to the individual to nominate somebody who is able to advocate on their behalf. And if that's something that they put in place, and of course we are more than happy to engage with the advocate that comes forward, for sure. It's definitely part of the support.
Thank you very much, Sally.
Beth has a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to follow on a little from Shahid's comments about reaching people. In my ward, I have some Ukrainian refugees. I'm sure we have quite a few across the whole borough, Hong Kong refugees. How are we going to reach people that are new to us and don't understand the way the British system works or doesn't work, as the case may be? I'm not sure how we can do that, but I'd like to think we're going to try.
It's okay, Chair. Just with regard to the Equality Forum, and just to give an example, I do know there's a representative on that group that is working with refugees, and I can't remember the name of the group.
Refugees.
It is Reading Refugees, but obviously they cover Wokingham as well. Also within our own services as well, with regard to having sort of representation, and this is where we need to be looking internally at what we offer, as well as external organisations with regard to who we are actually engaging with. But those would be a couple of the options that we would definitely be looking at around that. I don't know if any of my other colleagues have got anything they would add to that, but those are definitely what the routes that we would absolutely take to ensure that we are getting that voice into the strategy.
Can I follow that up saying, will you let us as councillors know that that's going on so that we can maybe contact people too?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Caroline.
Thank you. I don't mind waiting because I think you've actually answered my question. Because in early, we've had a very young population, schools are full. Now we've gone the other way and I've got a very aging population. I did catch on that you said you're going to keep engaging with the communities because they do shift. How often are you going to do this? Because this seemed to happen overnight. You know, 1 minute we had no school places and thank you.
So I think what we will do as part of our strategy going forward is include activity around that. We've got a reasonably new but not so new community and partnerships service now, which also comes under Sally, and this is really their bread and butter now, is to keep working with communities, understanding how they're developing and changing, and they are very much a part of our not just developing the strategy, but will be helping us to deliver the strategy as well. So I see them as key to doing that. They're on the ground. They see things changing almost year on year. So they would be key to that, I think.
I mean, another key partner is Age Concern as well. So obviously working with Age Concern to again ensure that we again are understanding those changes in community. And I think whilst I appreciate it was the ageing population you were picking up on, I think another really important part is also the voice of the child as well. So again, we're looking at opportunities with regard to how we're engaging through obviously the schools, etc., and how we make the best opportunity of that. So this is very much this strategy is, whilst we come and represent it, it's the council's strategy by you know, because it's every directorate is involved with what it is that we're doing. We're asking for them to advise us of events that they have going on as well within the borough, so that we can be asking questions within those sessions, and we can naturally start to understand the different demographics that we're reaching. So through those different meetings, it is then getting that understanding, and through making sure we're looking then at our always, is there a gap? Is there analysis that we need to keep doing to ensure that we've got as many voices heard as we develop this strategy? So we're always very keen to hear about events that are already happening within the community, because I think sometimes they're a more natural place for us to go and attend as well, and to talk to people. So again, I know us as in two people can't do that, but we would be looking at that across the board with regard to how we would attend different things like that.
Thank you. It's good that you're evolving it all the time and it just doesn't happen once every 5 years. Brilliant. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask a question before that, because it's almost the reverse of Caroline's question. My question is about there being not enough school places in Spencer's Wood and Swallowfield and Shinfield, and certainly the perception that there aren't enough school places, and there also aren't enough, there isn't enough public transport. So the two things are both, you know, disadvantageous to the population, the younger population in that area.
And I think that what you've raised kind of really highlights that this isn't, it's not a one size fits all for the whole borough. We need to look at key areas and what's happening, what the changes are in different areas, and look at the whole, you know, try and understand that. And that's why it's so useful to have colleagues who are out on the ground and they're kind of saying, well, I understand what's happening here and I understand what's happening here, and we can look at the data as well, but it doesn't
look at data, but it's not always as meaningful, is it? As in, you've got to start with your data as an evidence base, but hearing what's actually happening out in the, you know, out in the different communities, it is so valuable, which is part of the reason why coming and speaking to yourselves as councillors, understanding anything you can input with regard to where you feel we should be concentrating on or things we could be doing. We're very open to listening and taking that on board.
And probably listening to the parish councils as well.
Yep.
Probably on an individual basis rather than in the
Absolutely.
borough and parish liaison forum.
We were only just talking today, so I was talking to Sally today, absolutely, about making sure that you can go and speak to them as a group, but as you say, they're quite individual in their approaches. So absolutely, again, valuable to go and engage with them. And that's part of, again, that bigger plan that we are now working towards.
Okay, Alison.
Would I be right to think that there's some overlap with the fantastic community vision that we recently had presented to us at full council? And there's a lot to learn from how they went out and found lots of different people and different communities. And obviously, we're not just talking about people from different heritage backgrounds. We're talking about making sure we're talking to pregnant women and people with disabilities and different all of the different sexual orientation, marital status. But there's 9 protected things. It's not just people's race. And during the community vision, they were talking to everybody. What's your life now? What would you like it to be like? And we're talking 10 years ahead with the community vision. Yeah, and obviously a lot of this is about that, but it's a lot more solid, isn't it? It's about what we're going to actually do to achieve that. So you have got a lot to get done in the roadmap.
There is quite a lot to do in the roadmap, but you're absolutely right. So I'm working with Jackie Whitney, who obviously led, the officer that led on the vision, and we're actually using that as a blueprint. So it's not repeating everything we've already done. What are we learning from the different groups that they went to speak to? We've actually got a session with her this week where we're looking at that together so that we can map out exactly, as you've just said, what have they already learnt, and then how do we use that then to take it to the next sort of level so we can then get the information for this strategy, because one thing we've got to try and do is not duplicate, but actually learn from what we've already got, and how do we take the conversation on to then be meaningful and, as you say, can show action towards the EDI strategy. So I hope that sort of affirms that we are absolutely working right across the piece. It's not just a vision, it's also the Marmot principles as well. So we're also working with that team. We're also working with adult social care from the point of view of social care futures. So all of the sort of very big items that the council is invested in, it's making sure that all of those strands then feed into and are part of the EDI strategy. And I think what's really important then is how that then feeds up to our council plan, which is then what we're going to be delivering from the point of view of the vision for the borough. So it's just how those things connect. And I think the big thing is language. It's using the same language so that we're not using different words. It's making sure that our language is connected, and that we can clearly see that thread going through all of those particular items.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think the word you use, just to comment on that, language, right? I think that's so important. Use language which people can relate to, they can understand. Sometimes you use a corporate language with people are on the street might be struggling. What is this all about, right? So I think something they can really engage with. That's important. Other thing I was going to say was, yes, we use different formats for engagement. We mentioned survey. We look at the data. Is one way of doing it. Obviously, with the data, the nature of data is it tells you it is something which happened in the past. Right, that's historical, right? That's not the future. But what we're trying to do is project ourselves, formulate a strategy which is futuristic, right? I mean, the vision I see is like more of an aspiration. This is what we'd like to do, and this is like we end up, right? End destination. But strategy is more or less how we're going to get there, what we're going to do, and how we're going to get there, right? So that's so important from that point of view. That we actually. The best form of engagement is actually talking to people. There's nothing you can beat that, right? And I'm just hoping that part of your process You'll have maybe a face-to-face sessions in different parts of the borough, Woodley, Early, other parts of the borough as well, Morecambe, and we listen directly what the people are saying and what they would like to, because that is going to be the real, real intelligence. Yes, others will feed into that, and I'm not, not underestimating, the importance of that. But that is going to be more important face to face. So I'm assuming that's going to happen. And hopefully, when it does, you can share that with us as well as councillors, so we can promote it locally. And I would like to be part of that as well.
So we have done some of that already. We're doing it as part of our new council plan, but we're also, because they're so closely related, we're asking people around EDI and inclusion as well. So, for example, last Friday I was at Woodley Precinct with some colleagues, just standing there all day talking to members of the public and asking them what's important to them. It gave a really good insight as to what actually matters to people. And you're quite right, it's some of that engagement is where you get the most insight. So we'll be doing more of that. We'll be at libraries and we've been to Wokingham Marketplace as well. You were there, Louise. So yeah, absolutely. It's been really valuable and we'll do more of that.
Was that shared with the councillors as well? Have I missed it? The one in Woodley? I certainly did not know.
If it's not, it needs to be more overt with it. So I think we.
Yeah, I know it was in some of our residents' newsletters, but maybe it didn't come through to councillors. So we can look at our approach to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Others. Yeah, sure.
So, so many of these daytime engagement things, it's particularly Health Watch do it as well. They're in the daytime, they're not reaching people who are out at work. And I think that's a demographic that is hard to reach because, they're at work all day. They're quite busy. They're not necessarily going to come out in the evening. And I just wondered if you had some great ideas on how to do that. Because whenever I ask Health Watch what they're going to do, they always say they will and it never seems to quite happen.
I think this is again where we learned from the vision, because I think the vision, they did do evening sessions. I don't think it was always, and they were very keen. I think one of the gaps they noticed was that working age piece. So that's a bit that we're looking to make sure. I'm as I say, on Wednesday I've got a checklist of things that we need to sort of look at. It's weekends, whether or not we need to do events at weekends. So that again, we reach those different groups, because you're absolutely right. The daytime is good for certain demographics and do appreciate that, but we've got to be looking at our whole demographic with regard to this. So yes, I will be looking at different ways for capturing that kind of feedback.
Dave.
Thank you. Quickly, I just want to say, obviously, I've seen the timeline and the hope is that this is going to be signed off in May 2025. Let's fast forward to May 2029. Let's assume we're all here. How are we going to, as the scrutiny people, or how are we going to assess whether this strategy has been effective and and work out what areas have been less effective and more effective so that we can actually learn from this process?
If you want to go in, or I can, but we're basically the delivery plan. So whilst the strategy will be very high level and it will set out absolutely what it's looking to achieve, it's in the delivery plan that we would then be setting out. And that would be something that we would normally bring into overview and scrutiny on an annual basis, where we would demonstrate this was the action plan or the delivery plan, and this is what we did. We said we did type thing. But obviously when I say we said we did, it's also what our communities have said. And then hopefully what we've also again delivered out into our communities.
Can I suggest that we then see that delivery plan and how that's going to be as part of this process, because it's very difficult to assess the strategy without seeing that aspect to make sure that the process is robust.
I was just going to say, we've got the council plan delivery. I know it's the council plan and it's not the EDI strategy, but I also the year 4 action plan is due into
yeah, so we come once a year with our annual action plan, and progress against that. So that's on the current EDI strategy. So I would foresee us continuing to do that. So we'll have our action plan or delivery plan. It will have specific actions, targets and measures by which you can see quite clearly whether we're actually delivering or not.
And I think the point there as well is that the delivery plan will, for the new strategy, will be developed alongside the strategy. So it's not something that's then hidden away, because as you say, it's being able to show the action that you are then going to take for that year. So then you, as then the scrutiny, as from that side of the role here, you will be able to scrutinise what has been undertaken.
My view is they should all be dealt with as part of the same process and at the same time, because otherwise there's always a danger that you put in place your performance indicators after you've seen how the strategy started to work, and that can lead to very good results, but not necessarily the right ones.
Just to reassure you, we will make sure the delivery plan goes in at the same time. So as we're developing it, we will share drafts.
It's a point of clarification, Chair. Okay. Am I right that EDI strategy is internal focused as well as external focused as well, right? So that will look at the staff and obviously how we EDI compliant or the strategy. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the modules in the framework is focused on a diverse and engaged workforce. So absolutely, yeah, that's a key pillar to what we're doing, and so important, I think.
Agree.
To, you know, we need that inclusivity in our workforce in order to deliver good services to our residents. There is the other module is around leadership and organisational commitment. So that's quite internally focused as well. So that's really about how our political and officer leadership really kind of are visible, inclusive champions. It's about how we do the quality impact assessments and understand the impact of our decisions. So there's a whole lot of internally focused work to do as well.
Would you be able to share with councillors the results of the staff survey?
Yeah, we can share the high level. Yeah, we've got the survey, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, have we got any more? Everybody happy? Okay, well, thank you very much, Rachel and Louise and Emily for bringing that to us, and Sally online. Thank you. I go blank about names. Okay, on to item 41. Consideration of the current executive and IEMD forward programmes. So should I just read through the page numbers and see if anyone's got? Yeah. So has anyone got any questions on page 40? I can't read it. 3. Oh, 43, I think it is. Sorry?
I think it depends which pack you're looking at.
Ah. Oh no, she's right. Sorry, I've jumped. Yes, sorry, I had jumped ahead. You're quite right. It's page 35.
I just wanted to ask if the post-16 send hub in the old library, had that been to any scrutiny committee?
Just it came up in the medium-term financial planning session with CCOS last week, but that's the only level I've seen of detail so far. Not sure.
It's a
And that was yes, it was only because it's a proposal with a capital bid associated with it.
Okay. Page 36. Andrew, sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, so just related to that one. Is that item, is that a decision related to that capital? Is that a decision to go ahead, you know, agree or whatever with it? Is that what's happening for that item?
You know more.
No, so it was just the presentation of the medium-term financial plan for CCOS to give feedback as it goes to the rest of the decision-making process, but it wasn't the decision at that meeting. We weren't looking to make a decision on the actual hub, just it was in the inclusion in the medium-term financial plan. It was a question that came up about timing, so I would suggest we take that one away and come back. But there was no decision made that it was definitely happening or not. That wasn't the meeting.
No, my question is, we're on the executive meeting on the 28th, where it's a specific item.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking
about
the scrutiny meeting itself. Apologies.
No,
It was throw me for a second.
It was that item on there. Is that a decision which is happening, whether it goes ahead or not in the executive then, or and at what stage might that come to scrutiny? Do you know, to say the children's scrutiny? Well,
this is the agenda for the executive. So according to this, it's going to the executive for decision. And obviously, there doesn't seem to be enough time to get to scrutiny now. But we could check what's going on in the background.
Okay. Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39. And bit of page 40. Okay. And then there's the IEMD plan. Page, this is the one I can't read, 43. Okay. So on to everybody's happy with that. Draft work programs. Page 48, overview and scrutiny management committee. You circulated something about the council move. Neil.
Yes, that said it's coming to us in January. Then going to executive at the end of January.
The relocation of WBC, that's what it's called. Yeah, but there wasn't anything specifically to note about that.
Just the timeline, that's all we had.
Okay. Page 49. Page 50. Okay, children's services, page 51. Andrew.
I think there's a separate one which is circulated with this, because I think this one page was outdated,
right.
So they're on a separate
Page
sheet of paper.
57.
Is it? Oh.
6th of November.
Yeah. So it's on a separate document.
Well, 6th of November has already happened.
I thought CCOS looked busy as a general.
So think.
Alison.
It strikes me that sometimes, our agendas are packed with very worthwhile things to be looked at, and you do wonder how you're going to give enough time to everything to look at. We're in an unusual year in that we have no elections. And we never have OS scrutiny committees in April, and we'll know why. But we don't have that this year, so there is that opportunity to have another committee meeting without, I think, it being too onerous on the members. It's not like you putting 2 into a month or whatever. I just wondered if that was something that committee chairs had considered doing.
Certainly, it's something that we discussed for CCOS at the pre-meeting for this tonight, just looking at the forward work programme for the rest of the year and whether we actually needed to slot in something else to give more time to the important issues and some slack in the system as well. But I think I've asked officers to go away and just look at the plan that's there for the next sort of November, December, January, February on the forward programme, work out if any of those items will slip, are likely to slip, whether they can be moved forward or whether there's items on that programme that we want to have more time on. And then actually I'm going to ask at the next meeting whether we want to try and slot one in. But it's kind of I want to get the work programme and the forward look at what might be coming down the line to kind of inform that. But from my perspective, the CCOS, if it needs to happen to make sure we have sufficient time, then yes. Sorry, I'm not talking to microphone.
Okay, I've gone back. Any more on children's services? Climate emergency overview and scrutiny committee. Page 53.
I think it was just to note that we'd moved from CCOS to climate emergency. I think there's one of the papers on the flood response updates.
Yeah, flooding and flood risk management.
And I think increasingly we're looking at what should more logically or could more logically sit within that climate emergency.
As we discussed
portfolio.
last month.
And the flood one is a logical one of that.
Community and corporate on page 54. So happy with that.
Nothing to add really. I think I've asked officers to just double check. There's a couple of things that we've had slip. Playing pitches is the obvious one of late, but there are, when you look at the December meeting, for example, there are a couple of very heavy items on there from the economic development brief, strategy and the town centre briefing. And if either of those slip, then it puts more pressure onto future meetings. I think there's also as I mentioned earlier, the playing pitches strategy and Gray's Farm seem to have become decoupled.
Detached.
And we need to put those two back together because they are just linked. But again, I think we're just looking at how the rest of it works too. There's some other items in there. We just want to Alison's point, just are they going to happen in the meetings that we think they're going to happen in?
Yeah. And health overview and scrutiny committee. Any comments on that? 58.
Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
those agendas look fairly small, but those items, each of them is absolutely huge. As most of you know, we'll be lucky to get through all of that in those meetings, but we need to do a good job, especially on dental care and pharmacies. Hospital care is going its own sweet way. But those other two are huge issues for some areas in the borough.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Okay, got to the end of that. Right, agenda item 43, our action tracker. So on the equality plan update, we're going to have two update. We're going to go for 2 more sessions on that. One when they actually finish with the public consultation. we might just have a look at the changes that have been made by the consultation.
On the action tracker, can we consider whether something's been missed? On the action tracker, when we consider whether something's been missed, can we potentially have on the update as delayed so that people can see that, particularly if there's a repeatedly, one item being delayed?
Yeah, what are you thinking of in particular?
I wasn't. It was a general comment to say, we all know items slip, so that you can see, this item slipped twice. It really shouldn't slip again, because otherwise we could get into a situation where the executive wants to make a decision and it hasn't gone through proper scrutiny.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
good idea. Alison?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the general election review. Has the working group been formed now? Because I haven't heard any more about that. I wondered if Neil could update us.
I can update you after the meeting. I'll check with Andrew Moulton.
Sorry, do you mean you'll be able to tell all of the committee by email later in the week?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody happy with that? I think we've got to the end. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope it isn't raining as hard as it was earlier. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.